The sun was lowering slow that evening, dragging its gold across the wide-boned town of Dry Creek. Heat still shimmered off the hard-pan road, but the day had begun its surrender, and with it, a hush came creeping, like even the earth was holding its breath. The bell from the church struck once, twice, the sound dragging longer than it ought, as though iron too had grown weary. Horses whickered where they were tied, their shadows stretching like black stains against the dust. And down that same road walked Evelyn Harper, her bonnet pulled low, her fingers fidgeting with the frayed hem of her dress. She carried no basket this time, no list for flour or lard, only herself, and the weight of stairs that clung to her like burrs. Folks leaned against posts or sat on porches, speaking low but letting their eyes linger too long. In towns like Dry Creek, whispers traveled faster than wind across prairie grass, and Evelyn was their latest feast. "She's the one, ain't she?" A woman's voice hissed behind a lace fan. Harper's girl. Promise away. To that old coyote cane. Lord have mercy. Evelyn kept her eyes down, though she felt every glance like a splinter under skin. Her steps slowed near the mercantile where men gathered, hats tipped back, tobacco spit darkening the earth. She heard their laughter, not loud, but sharp enough to sting. She wanted to be invisible, to melt into boards beneath her, but the world gave her no such mercy. Inside her chest, a storm brewed, humiliation, fear, and something like anger, though she dared not name it. She had grown up learning to swallow much. Hunger, cold, the sound of her father's quiet failures. But this was different. This was her life being measured like cattle, her name being tied to Jedediah Kane's without her voice in it. Her father, Thomas Harper, once had strong hands that built fences and turned earth. Now those same hands trembled when they gripped a ledger or a bottle or anything that reminded him of the debts that pressed down harder than the summer heat. He had borrowed from Kane when the land gave nothing back, when the rains came wrong, when calves died before winter. Each loan signed with a shaking hand, each promise heavier than the last. And Kane had waited, patient as a rattler in tall grass, until the snare tightened beyond escape. That evening, in the dim cabin where the lamplight barely touched the corners, Thomas sat across from Jedediah Kane. Evelyn lingered near the door, her breath caught between ribs, every sense sharpened. Kane's voice was deep and rasped with years of whiskey and smoke. "You can't pay me, Harper. You know it, I know it. Land's worth near nothing. But I'll make you a bargain clear and square. Give me the girl and the ledger's ash." Thomas swallowed, the lines of his face carved deeper by shame. He didn't look at his daughter. Couldn't. She'll be cared for, better than I can give her. Evelyn's breath hitched. The words were stones in her stomach. Better. Meant she'd be caged in Kane's sprawling ranch house, wife to a man whose two wives before had gone to early graves, their names spoken only in hushed tones. It meant years of silence in the wave of his hand, heavy not with love but possession. Her eyes found her father's profile in the dim light, searching for a crack of mercy, of rebellion. But he stared at the table, broken. And in that moment, she knew, desperation could drive a man to betray even his own blood. The bargain was struck without her consent. Kane left with the tip of his hat, smug as a man who had bought himself not just land but youth, beauty, and the cruel pride of taking what another man could not keep. Evelyn stood there trembling, feeling her world collapse inward. The next morning, a rider came into Dry Creek. Caleb Morgan was his name, though few knew it yet. He came from the southern trail, dust clinging to him like another skin, his horse lathered but proud. He wasn't old, not yet, though his face carried the marks of weather and miles. A scar ran from temple to jaw on his left side, not disfiguring but making folks pause, wondering what blade or bullet had left it. He carried himself quiet, like a man who had known too much noise once and wanted none of it now. When he dismounted before the saloon, no one rushed to greet him. Drifters were not uncommon, but something in Caleb's stillness set him apart. He tied his horse with care, patted its neck once, then turned to the street. And that's where his eyes met Evelyn's. She was stepping out of the mercantile, head lowered, clutching a small sack of flour. In that instant, as if some unseen hand slowed time, she lifted her gaze and met his. The look lasted no longer than a breath, but it held weight. He saw not just a girl in a faded dress, but a soul caught in a snare. And she, though she didn't understand why, felt seen, as though the shadow she carried had suddenly been named. Caleb said nothing. He only bent, picked up the sack she had dropped in her startled grip, and handed it back. Their fingers brushed. That was all. Yet something shifted, quiet as the wind changing direction. Days passed, and word spread of Cain's claim. It was announced like a victory, the old man declaring it on the steps of the courthouse, as though he had purchased the town itself. Folks gathered, curious, gossips buzzing. Evelyn stood there, hands folded tight, eyes on the ground. Her father lingered beside her, hollow-eyed. Cain loomed with pride, a vulture who had found his prize. The crowd murmured, some pitying, others smirking, all complicit. The air felt thick, choking. Evelyn's heart pounded so hard she thought it might burst through her chest. Shame burned her cheeks, hotter than the sun overhead. And then boots struck the dust. Caleb Morgan stepped forward from the edge of the crowd, shoulders square, hat low. He moved with a calm that silenced whispers, each step a defiance. He stopped before Cain, before Evelyn, and let the moment breathe heavy. "She's not yours to claim," he said. The words were not loud, but they carried. They rolled through the crowd like thunder over open plains. Cain stiffened, eyes narrowing, his hand twitching near the gun at his hip. "You some kind of fool, boy." Cain spat. "This is settled business." Caleb's gaze never wavered. Some debts don't give a man the right to own another soul. His hand hovered near his revolver, but his voice was even, low, dangerous. "She don't belong to you." The street was still. Even the horses seemed to hold breath. Evelyn's eyes lifted, wide, disbelief and something like hope tangled in her chest. For the first time in her life, someone had stood between her and the weight of the world. Cain's face flushed red, but pride wore with caution. Caleb's stillness was the kind that came from men who'd stared death in the eye and did not flinch. And though Cain's hand twitched, he let it fall. His voice cracked with venom instead of bullets. "You'll regret this, boy." But it was Cain who turned, not Caleb. Cain who retreated under the gaze of the crowd that had fallen silent, their whispers swallowed. Caleb stood unmoved, his shadow stretching long, his presence rewriting the air itself. Evelyn's tears slipped free then, but they were not a despair. They were something else entirely. Release, astonishment, the first fragile tremor of dignity returning. And as the crowd began to murmur again, the old soul of the tale leaned in, whispering to you, the listener. "Some say the West was built on guns and gold, but I reckon it was built on the quiet courage to stand when standing was hardest. And sometimes all it took was one soul seeing another, to change the course of life.